So thank you everyone for joining the fourth, time flies when you're having fun, presentation in a series of presentation about open science, open access, data management, and so on. I would like to ask Dr. Olga Goldin, Director of the Libraries and Information System in Bar-Ilan, to say a few opening words.
Okay, so good morning everybody once again. Sarit, you have stolen my opening words, so
sorry.
I will, yeah.
It's because I wanted to say time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, joking, yeah. But wow, it's really, the fourth lecture, the fourth meeting in our series of embracing open science meetings that the libraries and information system of Bar-Ilan University have organized for all our librarians and information specialists and researchers community. Actually, we discussed several very interesting subject areas of open access, publishing of information, of institutional repositories, and all the open science and open, you name it, things. And today it's also a very interesting and very important subject of data management, because we more and more in the libraries and in all the research activities are dealing with data. And in our changing world, changing environment, the change of the data forms and formats and channels is so fast, and we as professionals who deal with information and data understand how important is the subject of access to the data, and how hard is sometime to get access to something which is not impossible, and which is not supported by our technology. So I'm very glad that we have today two honored guests. Simcha, I hope you will introduce Eli and Sis, and I am very glad to welcome you, Eli and Sis, and I also want to wish all of us a very interesting and fruitful lecture and meeting. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
So, welcome again. And it's a real pleasure for me to introduce our guests from the Netherlands, Eli G. and Ches Hoff. Eli is a senior policy advisor in data archiving and networked services, DANS. DANS is a Dutch National Center of Expertise repository for research data. She's the project leader of Horizon 2020 project like Open Air Advance, EOS Hub, and ERI at the DANS Center. She is a National Open Access Desk. She's a NOAD of Open Air, so she's my colleague. DANS is involved in research data management and in the legal entity of Open Air, which is Open Air MK. In the Netherlands, Eli participates in the editorial team of the website of Openness NL, and she is a member in the UKB working group of open access. UKB is a Dutch consortium of university libraries and National Library of the Netherlands. Ches Hoff has worked since 2016 as a project acquisition officer and a trainer at Data Archiving Network Services, the DANS. He has been involved in establishment of several European and national projects around open and fair data. As a trainer, he is responsible for the running of Essential for Data Support, an internationally recognized course of research data management, and is involved in data training activities within the Youth Open Science Cloud, the EOS. Next to the project acquisition and training, Chess is responsible for interaction with the life sciences community and representing dance in geodata networks. Area of special interest are metadata knowledge organization system, costs, and data sharing infrastructure. Chess has a PhD in evolutionary biology and paleontology. For more than 10 years, he is a coordinator of project around biodiversity data in his position as node manager of Dutch branch of the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. So the floor is yours.
Simcha, very much. Thank you very much. I will share my screen now. Have a look. Share. Is it okay like this?
Yeah.
Is it in presentation mode also? Okay, then I will start now. Thank you very much for joining us in this webinar on fair research data management. I'm not alone here. I do that together with my colleague Kees Hof, and we were already introduced, so I don't have to do that. Let's see how it... Next slide. Yes. This is the program of today. Of course, we are a little bit later, but that doesn't matter. I will tell you more about dance, but well, that was already done, I have to say. And project EOSC Hub and Open Air. We do this in the context of EOSC Hub together with Open Air. And then I will tell you more about open and fair research data. Then we will have a 5-minute break. And after the break, Kees will tell you more about research data management and data management planning. And the last 20 minutes we want to use the wrap up for discussion with you. So I hope that we will have time for that. But first I have a few questions. So please use the polling option in the Zoom room. Can you help me with this?
Yes, you're ready for the first poll. Okay. Here we go, everyone. I'm going to launch a poll. Please feel free on your screens to answer the poll. There are multiple choice questions, and it's all anonymous. So just feel free to answer.
Yes, and please use the slide bar to go to the next questions. There are 3 questions.
Mm-hmm. We are up to about 70% of our participants have voted. Should we give another minute?
I see that most of you are librarians, and a few researchers and 2 data supporters. And my next question was, why are you interested in research data management?
Here we go, we have all the results.
Okay, thank you. I see that you have to know most of you have to know more about it as a data supported, and we already heard it, that it will become more a topic in your in Israel, in your institute. And I had a question about the European Open Science Clouds, and some of you have heard it, but most of you didn't hear about it. So, okay, this can be, thank you very much for filling this in. This can be stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Can I do it, or?
You can keep going.
Can I, okay, I can't go. Can I go to the next slide? Okay, yes, thank you. So first I want to tell you more about DANS, EOSC Hub and Open Air. And I tell you more about EOSC Hub and Open Air because you can find a lot of information and services on the websites of EOSC Hub and Open Air about research data management. So I think that's very important to know about. Try to get, yes, next slide. Well, EOSC Hub, oh yeah, no, sorry, first about DANS. DANS is a national center of expertise and a repository for research data. So we help researchers to make their data available for reuse, and we think about fair data. And with more than 160,000 data sets and a staff of 60, we are one of the leading repositories in Europe. And since December last year, we had a new program for the next 5 years on the focus on fair, it describes our plans for the next 5 years. So about EOSC Hub. EOSC Hub is about services for the European Open Science Cloud. It's an Horizon 2020 project, and it ends this month. And the European Commission wanted a few years ago to have a European Open Science Cloud. So we are now busy to develop that. And the European Open Science Cloud should give access to every researcher in Europe, but also abroad, to all the data sets across borders and across scientific disciplines. And to do so, EOSC Hub was developed, and EOSC Hub is open for service providers and end users, the researchers. And it gives an overview of services and training resources. And then, of course, training, for example, about research data management, but also analyzing data, computing, storing data, sharing data together with your colleagues in projects, etc. Open Air, well, Simcha already told a little bit about it. It's also an Horizon 2020 project, and it ended February, so last month. And the mission of Open Air is to support the European Commission in their open science policy. And there is an information network with 450 million linked metadata records from over 10,000 scholarly trusted data sources. So you can find there information on publication, research data, funders, and a lot of them is open access publication, open data. There's also a human network of 34 national open access tests, NOATs. And Simcha and I are two of those national open access tests, and we have contacts with the open science communities in our countries. And Open Air develops all kinds of services, like Zenodo, a catch-all repository, but also Argos, a DMP tool, data management planning tool, Amnesia, tool to anonymize data. They have training, they give trainings, webinars, workshops, their support with fact sheets and guides. And I want to give special attention to the Task Force Research Data Management webpage. It's a webpage on Open Air, and there you can find guide for researchers, blogs, webinar about research data management. So now I will tell you more about open and fair research data. Well, you see for the last 10, 15 years that research data became more and more a topic in the research area. There is data deluge, more and more complex data. And what can we do with it? Of course, there's a growing recognition of the value of data. There used to be only recognition of the publications, but now you can see that also the research data are becoming more and more important. Of course, data sharing is important. And that's also a topic of today, of course. And there has also been cases of data fraud. And I don't know how it's in your country, but we had it in our country. For example, in 2011, Diederik Stapel, a professor in the social psychology, he made up his own data. And also we had a case about cardiovascular medicine, and that he also made up his own data. It was about beta blockers, so it was quite important. But you see it also last year, case of data fraud in the biology in the United States. Or you see it in June 2022, elite medical journals retract coronavirus papers over data integrity issues. So it's still going on, and that's why it's important that one can reproduce the research and use the data. But what are research data? There's a very nice video on YouTube about it. So research data is all factual evidence which is collected or generated by researchers. And here you can see examples of research data. It can be text or Word documents, spreadsheets, statistics, results of experiments, measurements, observation resulting from fieldwork, survey results, interview recordings, audio tape, videotapes, images, laboratory notebooks, database contents, models, algorithms, scripts. And why is long-term data preservation important? Well, it's a prerequisite for data sharing, of course. It makes research more transparent. I talked already about the data fraud. Some say, well, it's taxpayers' money, so also not only the publication, but also the data should be shared and reused. That's a financial implication then. If you want to fight global issues like COVID-19, climate change, food security, etc., then you need to share data. It will reduce animal testing. Think of cultural and political heritage. For example, you have the language archive, and there you can find data. You can find languages there that are that's nobody using anymore. In India, for example, you had thousands of small languages, and now only some hundreds. So it's good if it will be preserved. And of course, you can compare research results in time and place. For example, the socio-economic situation of Israel with 20 years ago. So that's good that if you have the data from 20 years ago. And Venkat, he's working in the UK in a digital curation center. He has written a nice blog post about this, so you can have a look at it.
I also know from the patents search field that for example, a laboratory notebook, the date of some information about data from laboratory notebook could be an evidence in the patent trial. So it's very important to keep it and to preserve also for the patents field.
Ah, yes, yes. Well, thank you for this information. Yes, yes, you're right. But do you have to keep everything forever? Well, that may be not necessary, but you can have some criteria. Data underlying publications. Do you want to keep? I think you should keep them as long as possible. And data that can't be recreated, like interviews or environmental recordings. But you also have to think what is potentially useful to others, and not only in your discipline, but also in other disciplines or in the future, for example. And what has scientific, cultural, or historical value. Think of images from special situations. And well, I don't know how it's in your country, but in the Netherlands, they say it's good academic practice to keep the data at least for 10 years. But then you have to think about do I have to keep it or not? So now I have my next polling option.
All right, here we go. I hope everyone can see it on their screen.
Yes, I can see it. The first question is, what problems, concerns do you have, or do you think researchers have with sharing research data? And there are two more questions about FAIR and about which data sharing incentives do you see? So if you can fill it in, please.
We are about at 42% voted. Should we give it a few more seconds?
Yes, okay. Can you, if you want to fill it in, please? There are 3 questions.
Okay, we seem to have stabled. I'm going to end the poll.
Yes.
Share the results with everyone.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, well, I can see that you think that most of them have concerns about sensitive information, and that's of course is an issue, and another is large one is unsure I have permission to share. Yes, if you're working together with others, then also you don't know if you have permission to share. I will come back to it later. FAIR is, well, a lot of people already know about FAIR data. I will tell you more about it. And which data sharing incentives do you see? Institutional policy. Yes, I think they're very, very important. So it's good that you have brought it up, and also funder requirements. Okay, thank you very much. This will be my next topics. So I will go to the next slide, yes. So that was also a topic in publication, the state of open data. They have a publication about the state of open data every year since a few years. And they had a survey, I think it was around 4,000 people that filled in the survey. And you can see what problems, concerns, if any, do you have with sharing data sets. And indeed, the sensitive data scored high, and also not receiving the appropriate credit or acknowledgement. Well, I have to say that now more and more, it's easier with persistent identifiers also to have credits, and you have to license the copyright issues here very well, and take care that you will be credited. That's of course very important. You see at the bottom of this list that I have no problems concerned about sharing data. So there are also researchers that don't have problems with it. And here you can see some reasons why do researchers want to share the data. There are researchers that think, yes, data should be open because of social accountability, transparency. So they really like it that the data will be open. They think that it will increase the visibility of research results, and I will have a study, I will show you a study about it. It's citable thanks to the digital object identifiers. Yes, I already told you so, and that is also good, of course, if you want to have credit for it. And they say, well, it encourages the reuse of the data for new research questions and for verification purposes. And also, of course, also for the comparing of situation of the comparing research, comparing one situation with the one in 20 years ago. I have here an example in the astrophysics, and it's a publication where they found out that there's a citation advantage for papers with links to data receiving. No, I tell it wrong. It's papers with links to data receive more citations than papers without links to data. So here you can see it's an advantage. And you can see here another advantage of data sharing. It's one from the Research Data Alliance. It's a big organization where data supporters are members from, or researchers are members from. And this is a working group on the COVID-19 illness. So since 2016, you had a FAIR data principles. And the FAIR data principles are there to increase the findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reusability of research data. And What it's about, it's findability. It's easy to find both by humans and computer systems. And accessibility, you can increase it by well-defined licenses and access conditions. Interoperability, so the data sets can be combined, and also here by humans as well as computer systems. And reusability, so the data can be used by in future research and be processed further using computational methods. And well, think about that open data is not the same as fair data because, well, think of sensitive data. So open access when possible, but closed when necessary. So it's not the same. And how do we do that, the fair data principles? Well, the findability is assigning persistent identifiers, so you can find the data sets back, provided with rich metadata, like the poster, like the geographical locations, like the time for the data set, access conditions, etc. And register in a searchable resource, not somewhere on the internet, but make it possible to find the data. Well, accessibility is retrievable by using retrievable by ID using a standard communication protocol. Here you think, for example, the HTTP protocol. Metadata should be accessible even if the data aren't. For example, a researcher can contact another researcher about the data because he can find the metadata. Interoperability, use formal, broadly applicable languages. For example, RDF for the doubling core, for example, is an example. Use standard vocabularies like thesauri or classification, qualified references. An example here is X is a regulator of Y, and it's a more qualified reference than X is associated with Y. So make qualified references. Reusability, also here the rich metadata or more documentation about it, like abstracts, clear licensing, provenance, where does it come from the data set, use of community standards in the discipline. And there are tools to help. In FAIR, a project led by Dans, the FAIR Aware tool was developed. FAIR Aware helps the research to understand and increase the fairness of the data for the purpose of reuse. And I'm sure you can't read all the questions, but there are questions for all the symbols FAIR. And for example, the findability, are you aware that the data set should be assigned a globally unique persistent identifier? And then you can get more information why that's necessary and how to do that. And this is almost my last slide. There are data sharing incentives. Well, you already said there should be incentives by the requirements from the institute, for example. And you see it that there was a study about it from Knowledge Exchange. And you see that the influence of sharing norms within the direct research circle in your institute, for example, or in your discipline helps as an incentive in data sharing. I think there should be professional rewards for data sharing, for practicing open science. There should be professional rewards. But external redriver can be funder policies or publisher requirements, data archiving protocols. And another study is providing researchers with the skills and competences they need to practice open science. It's a report by the EC Working Group on Education and Skills under Open Science. And the survey was answered by nearly 1,300 researchers in Europe. And 3/4 of them said they didn't participate in open access or open data training, but they would like to do so, because then you can learn more about licensing and how to find a repository, and also Kees will tell you more about it. And they thought that data management was very relevant for research, but they find it hard to find data support or infrastructure at an institutional level. I think that's very important too, that not only the data support is there, but also an infrastructure for it. And this is my last slide. I think that submitting your data to a repository is very, very important during the research or after the research, and maybe more important than opening up the data, because you can maybe also share it in other ways. But well, this is a point. And now I don't know how we are in the time, Kees. Well, or shall we take questions later?
I would suggest to indeed take a very short break, 5 minutes, and then continue. And please, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat box, so we'll keep track of the questions, and then we can address these questions in the discussion session that we planned after my presentation. Hope that's okay.
Maybe suggest that if it's not necessary, we'll skip the break because we started late and maybe people need to go to other meetings.
No, absolutely, that's fine. Just 1 second, because I need to get a glass of water. Okay. And then I'll start straight away. Okay. Just a moment.
Ellie, if I may ask for the time being a question about interoperability. There are different disciplines, and in each one they have their own vocabulary and so on. So can we find, is there a place that I can find the standard vocabulary for a special field, or it's common knowledge?
I wouldn't know where to find it, but at this moment, but there are places where you can find lists of vocabularies. So
that is quite an issue because that comes to all the field of ontology, and there is major confusion because basically the idea is to find specific words for a specific concept. But if you look for ontology, you will have very complex words out there.
Yeah.
I know I was involved in a grant proposal to establish a vocabulary to a certain field in chemistry. So are there already established vocabularies to the different other fields?
Yes, there are. Yes, they are. Yes, I will give you more information about it. But there are more disciplines that have those standards.
Okay, and if I may just add, in our lab, we really are for open data, and our motto was, one's man's trash is the other's man's treasure. So if we have data that we already have and we don't have any use for it, there may be other researchers in other fields that can have a real advantage of using our data. So we are not losing anything, and we are giving benefit to other fields. So yeah, we believe in sharing data.
Yes, very good, very good.
And we don't expect to get any outcome of your data, there is nothing better than sharing it.
Yes, yes. But
to
you see sometimes that people are sharing it just in a place on the internet, but not in a real repository, which is much better, of course. Kees, I don't see the presentation mode.
Okay, because I
maybe you otherwise you swap this place on in the top. Yeah.
Yeah.
We still.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can all see my presentation?
Yes, and it's in the presentation mode.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much, Ellie, for your first session. And I'll now continue and focus a little bit more on research data management and, quite important, data management planning or data management plans. So why actually should you manage your data and plan your data management? That's an important question, of course, we'd like to address. And you've already seen an image with a slide from Ellie with the same image, only slightly different. Of course, it's just very important for your own sake to get into proper research data management. You don't want to use all your valuable data. You don't want to get your data corrupted or anything goes wrong or missing. So proper research data management is basically benefiting your own research and your own practices. But as just mentioned, very nice, there is also a lot of value in sharing. And for proper sharing, you need proper research data management. And it's not only popular to share your clothes or your furniture, it's also becoming more and more popular to share your data. And as mentioned before, just in the break, of course, you generate data for research that can be reused for research, more or less a similar kind of research. But let us not forget that it's sometimes also possible that people use your data for an entirely different goal. Like we see here, the boots are being used for something they were actually not made of, but still very functional. But to have a more practical and very nice example, I think actually, is, for example, this research. And you may have come across this subject, but it's really intriguing that climate scientists have been using old ship logs from the 19th century or even earlier, where there were a lot of records in the logbooks made by the sailors about the ice conditions and the animals living on the ice and the position of the ice shelves. It now turns out that the proper management of these ancient data helps modern scientists to reconstruct climate changes and the impact of climate changes on the Arctic and subarctic ice sheets. So that's a very nice example of proper ancient data management that made Datable useful for current research. And this can happen also with your research, of course. Ellie already mentioned this. Of course, a very important factor that promotes proper research data management is to avoid scientific misconduct. And this is a reference to a report that actually appeared after the case that Ellie mentioned this morning. You know, how, of course, science funding organizations were considering well, it's a blame, of course, on your scientific record if such things happen with your the research you funded. So they thought they now have guidelines to avoid scientific misconduct, and it's important that it's mentioned in these documentations. And this is from our academy. That it should always be able to justify the conclusions you make in your research based on the data acquired. And you should be able to help account for those data. So you should be able to provide access to the data and explain how you turn the data into information. Also, in the long term, these kind of data should remain available. So we are then actually in a position to retrace errors or mistakes or misinterpretations that have been made or falsifications that have been made in the past and explain those in the future. And for this scrutiny, it's absolutely necessary to proper archiving your data and proper research data management. All these underlying documents have been worked upon, and we have now a more recent version. It's called the Netherlands Code of Conduct for Research Integrity. And there's a very clear section in here about your data management that tells you that you should provide, as an organization, as facilitating research, that you should provide your research in an infrastructure that allows them good data management. You should provide possibilities to store data, not only data, but also software and codes and protocols, basically all of your research outputs, in such a way that it can be stored permanently. Security is an important issue, of course. If you store your data and codes and research material, it should be stored securely and for an appropriate amount of time. It's very often related to disciplines. I don't know if this is internationally the same case, but for data from medical research, there are very strict time spans for preserving the data. I think in the Netherlands it's 10 or 15 years. You should at least preserve your data. And after that also, you should delete your data for several reasons. The FAIR principles are already embedded in these documentations. So we are moving from, this indications about maintenance, security, repositories. We are moving to implementing the FAIR principles also in practice. So it is important to plan your data management, and it allows you to get credits for your data. It maximizes the value of your data, whether it's for the same kind of research in the same time or just after your own research, or if it's in the near or distant future, or whether it's by a completely other discipline or for another purpose. They always have value. It saves you also to get distracted by irrelevant information. Getting into proper research data management allows you to focus on the core issues around your data. It definitely helps you to avoid acquisition of fraud or bad science. If you can, if you are being held responsible for certain mistakes or misinterpretation of your statistics, it is very good to simply say, well, here are my data, here are my algorithms, here are my statistical data, please tell me what you think is wrong, and we can discuss this as scientists amongst each other. So having really ready access to your data yourself, but also for others, is a great thing to avoid bad science, so to say. And one of the possibilities, of course, and that's something that we are now slowly moving towards, is also next to your research, also to publish your data in a data paper, if that's available for your discipline, and get due credits for your data. And note that data is anything that you produce during your research. It can also be data that you kind of refreshed or reused or annotated from other research. All of this should be included in when you publish your own data. And as I just mentioned, I think we are ready for a paradigm shift at this point. And I'm not sure if who of you really went into the Go FAIR or the FAIR papers and the origins of the FAIR principles. But I had the honor to once witness a presentation of Barend Mons, and he's basically the founder of the FAIR data. And he made very clear that we are now heading towards flipping the coin. Data are the most important output of your research, and publications are derived from your data. It's not the other way around. So data are that important, and that's where we should also take care and focus much more on the preservation of the data. what is important for if we get to the practice of proper research data management, of course, is that we keep the research data life cycle in mind. And here you see a very simple version of the research data life cycle. There are more complicated versions on the web, but the research data life cycle it keeps track of the process that you as a researcher take to complete a project or a study from the early beginning. So you actually write out how you're going to collect your data, how you're going to assemble your data, how are you going to process and interpret your data, how are you going to analyze your data, from the preservation strategy, providing access to your data for other people, and in the end, how your data can or will be reused. So this covers the whole cycle that your data go through from the early beginning to the end when you publish your data or share your data. And for all these steps in the research data life cycle, good research data management is absolutely essential. There's sometimes a little bit of confusion, of course. What is important for the outside world at which moment in your research data life cycle? And I made this little graph to support the thought, or to stimulate the thought of students. I think sharing with the outside world is important in the first steps of your research data life cycle, when you are collecting the data, when you're processing the data, when you're analyzing the data. That's the moment where you share your data with your fellow researchers or your research group. Once you get in a more mature stage of your research data life cycle, you also start thinking about archiving your data and publishing your data. And obviously, for proper archiving your data and publishing your data, the role of repository is very important. I mean, you need a proper platform to get into archiving your data and publishing your data. So repositories, and of course, as we come from one of the major European repositories, is an important issue for us. We can spend an entire afternoon on the role of repositories, the functionalities of repositories, and which kind of repositories we have around. But just to very briefly summarize, the role of repositories is a place where you preserve and manage and provide access to your many types of digital materials, whether it's images, data, algorithm. It also allows you to curate your data and have other people manage searches or discovery actions for your data. There must be, of course, sufficient control on the digital material, and there must be systems in place to certify the authentic nature of the data and provide reliable accessibility and use of the data. So many of the things that are related to fairness of data are intrinsically included in the functioning of proper repositories. And as we don't, as I say, we can spend quite a long time on repositories. This is actually a slide that I use when teaching students on how to find the proper repository for your research data. It's very important that you set your criteria right, of course. So I have been involved in medical research. Who do I want to be able to find my data? Who do I want to be able to reuse my data? Are there any issues for my own data that are important when it comes to legal issues like the GDPR regulations, sensitivity of the data? All these criteria are important when you select a proper repository for your data. And this image shows you the address of read-tree data. I think at this point, that's a very nice tool that can actually help you to find a repository that fits the purposes of your research and your needs. I did a short run on the repositories. I think I discovered 9 repositories from Israel, but it's not entirely safe, the filter system, so there might be more of repositories, but please have a look and see what's in there for you. And if you run your own repository, just have a look whether you're in there or not. And if not, there are also guidelines on the website to see how you can register your own repository. Okay, I now would like to move to the data management plans. And it's time for the last poll that we made for you.
Yep, sure. I'm going to set up the
Naomi,
last
please.
poll. Here we go. The last poll is ready to launch. All right, you guys should be seeing.
I'm very curious whether you have any time in your life seen a data management plan or actually completed the data management plan.
Should I read out the questions or? No, here, people are starting to.
Yeah, no, it's moving, yeah. It's always very interesting for us to see. We are very much biased, of course, you know, working on these issues on a daily basis. But I see that the data management plan is still something quite new for some of you. And don't, okay, oh, I see, well. I think it's still moving, so. I'm happy to see there's at least one person who's completely into data management plan tools. Okay, I think we can stop the poll. I can actually. It's very good to know that data management plans is still something new for most of you, not all of you. And also within your organization, it is still something new, or you're beginning to consider using data management plans and handling data management plans, as most of you come from library.
I think I'm gonna.
I think it's maybe because of most of the audience are librarians, and we have more researchers here. I'm sure that the numbers were increased.
Okay, and hopefully after the next section of my presentation, because I will get a little bit into the details of data management planning. So because it's an important element of research data management, and it's also a very practical element of research data management. So a DMP, data management plan, is important. It's the place where you actually where you write down what is going to happen with your data. How will you standardize your data? How will you document your data? What kind of issues are important for your data? Whether it's technical issues or legal issues. Again, your research data lifecycle is important for your data management plan. Good research data management is at the core of your data management plan. And it's a data management plan is an important tool for proper research data management. You should see it as a tool, I think. It's like with scuba diving, you plan the dive and next to that you dive the plan. So it's the same for your research. And a good data management plan is for your own benefit and safety. It helps you to use your data also by yourself in the near future. And it allows other people to make use of your data, and all captured in a nice plan. Also keep in mind that for the research community that you are serving, they are producing data, they are producing images, they are producing papers, but they also, a data management plan is an important output of research. So, and I see in the near future that next to your publications and your data, also your data management plans will be published as such. It's already happening. There are institutes that publish the data management plans of their researchers. And open DMPs is an important development at this point. So the traditional format of a data management plan, basically, it's still a kind of paper form. Well, of course, you complete it in your computer, in which you provide information on the administrative details, like the name of the research. You provide information on the methods that you are using. You provide information on the data that you are using. You provide information on financial and legal aspects of your research. There are hundreds of different formats out there, very often a kind of generic form. So you can fill this in as a researcher the way you want to. There's a lot of open space for completing information. So it very much depends on, you know, the energy of the researcher, whether our data management plan is very complete and detailed, or whether it's basically in providing a rough framework for the research. This is a nice site to go into the kind of traditional DMP information, the DMP templates. There are hundreds online on the website of the DCC from the UK, the Digital Competence Center. But we see now that also at the data management plan level, things are evolving. Left is the traditional one. On the right one, you see an example of the European Research Council, where they provide a data management template that simply only asks you to address the fair aspects of your research. So you should be able to, provide information on the findability, the accessibility, the interoperability, and the reusability of your data. So we see that there is an evolvement going on in the research data plan landscape. Funders are interested in proper data management plans because they want to focus much more on the return on their investments. If a lot of budget is invested in your research, what is the societal and benefit of this? And what's the benefit for other research disciplines and other researchers? FAIR becomes a leading principle in data management planning. And also in terms of technology, things are evolving. There are now machine readable data management plans are out there. And there are also data management plans that actually can be fed with by electronic means. I show you 3 examples of tools that researchers can now use to provide data management plans online and in a more automated way. For example, Argos. This is a very nice example of a product. It's actually originating from the open air community. It allows you to tune your data management plan towards a certain discipline. We have the Data Steward Wizard, which is slightly more focused on the life sciences, but it also allows you to provide very complete and specific information in your data management plan. And as just mentioned, DMP Online, where there is still also the technology is evolving, where you can see getting more advanced online means to create a data management plan that fits your specific domain or specific discipline. One of my last slides, what's going on with the data management plans right now? Well, there's something interesting going on, of course. The data management plan now becomes a tool that brings together, for example, standards from certain disciplines, and the so-called knowledge organization systems, all the vocabularies, ontologies, thesauri, word lists for a specific discipline. I've chosen biology here as an example, can be incorporated in your data management plan. So if I'm a biologist and I mentioned I work with several species, I can include in my data management plan the source where I find the proper description of these species, whether this is the plants of Israel or Fauna Europaea. I can very clearly indicate where the specific information is coming from. The same for organizations and funders. They can also include certain elements in the DMP that specifically fit their purpose. So if a funder wants to know, what kind of financing model is involved in your research, this kind of information can be included. So there are a lot of developments going on right now. This is my last slide. If you want to see more about the developments around research data management and data management planning, specifically focusing on research domains like medicine or social sciences or humanities or technology, there are several papers that are of interest. This is one of the oldest, I think, from Science Europe. The director of our institute, the former director of DANS, was involved in the creation of this guidance. And it's a very nice example where they describe how very discipline-specific information should be become an essential part of your research data management working ways and your data management planning. As I say, this was my last slide. How are we doing in time-wise? We would like to end with some statements for discussion, but we had 4 in mind. But I think maybe we should reduce this a little bit, considering the time. I'm looking at Ellie. Maybe Ellie, we should start with the. As there are a lot of librarians in the room, so to say, maybe we could start with the last statement that we provided.
Yes, and then maybe number 2. That's also a nice one, I think.
Yeah, let's spend a couple of minutes on both of these statements. And I know it's a bit difficult to discuss something in the Zoom room, but you can use the chat box.
Maybe I will start and maybe other
will
please.
If I can just suggest that maybe you stop sharing, we'll be able to see each other in the
Okay, that's excellent.
I totally agree with the statement. I think that libraries around the world, as a librarian, of course, I'm very objective. I think librarians and libraries around the world are a leading force in promoting those kind of issues, and not just data management, but also, of course, open science in general and open access and so on. So, I think we should continue to be part of this movement. And I think that it make us or transform us to be an essential part of the academic process. So there is no longer a division between researchers doing the research and libraries collecting the data or the final outcome, but now libraries are part of the process. So we meet somewhere along the road.
And you notice that they can find you easily, or do they have trouble finding you? Do they know that you are the expert, or?
I think this is our main. It's a good question. I think it's our main obstacle nowadays. That at least in Israel, I don't know how it works in other parts of the world, but in Israel, I think that we have the obligation to inform them that we are here and we have the knowledge and we can help them with those kind of issues. We can help them to promote their research. We can help them promote their status as researchers. So I think it's now today it's the main issue, and we do a lot of activities. I mean, these kind of meetings are part of it, of course. To say we are here and come and talk to us.
Yeah.
Okay, I would like to add also, I think we in Israel are just at the beginning of this journey. I think we have a lot of work to do, And I just want to ask, maybe you can give some kind of the whole picture, how the libraries in Europe and maybe in Netherlands are involved in these activities, because we know that now many libraries have a position of data management librarian. Of course, there are lots of institutional repositories, and part of those repositories are also data repositories and not only publications. And we are, as I told, we see a great challenge in entering this area. I'm not sure that we have any university library where the subject of data management is now very active, and the librarians are very experienced in this. I think we are in the beginning of this process. So it's, I think everybody understands the importance, and also the importance for the libraries, not only the importance of this flow process, the importance of libraries to be the players, the important players, because also it makes our positioning in the university more stable and more important. And it's very interesting to know how the things are doing, for example, in Netherlands, if you may say us. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Shall I say something, Ellie?
Yes, okay.
And please correct me when I'm wrong. But no, I think in the Netherlands, it's very obvious that the libraries play a very important role in research, data management, attitudes, and developments within the universities. There is always a little bit of a risk, of course, that researchers consider libraries not as the best place to advise them on specifically more discipline-related issues, which is sometimes true, but not always. But and I think one of the interesting developments that is going on right now is the appointment of data stewards in the Netherlands. So a lot of the universities appoint data stewards. They are very often embedded in a certain research group or a faculty. So they have knowledge of the specific research domain. But on the other side, they also work with the library people when it comes to training, when it comes to workshops, when it comes to helping people finding the proper repository. So we are creating this in-between layer of people that are working between the libraries and between the certain research groups and disciplines. And this, it's my impression that it helps to synergize the process, to speed up the process of interaction between the libraries and the scientific communities. And we have several examples. I'm also coaching the Essentials for Data Support, where we always invite people. I had a beautiful presentation from the University of Leiden, where they're really like, the library has a team of 4 people that are organizing workshops, open science, coffee cafes, all kind of activities around proper research data management and open science. And it's working pretty well.
Thank you, Kis. I think it's so natural for libraries to be a significant players on this scene because of our competencies of collecting, organizing, and disseminating information, and all our skills of providing information literacy activities and training and so on. And I hope it will also be very relevant for data management activities. So I wish us a good luck in Israel with this.
Yeah, it is always tricky to work with scientists, of course. They come to your desk, they want to be informed. If you don't provide them right away with the proper information, they think next time, okay, I'll go somewhere else. That's what we see a lot. They go kind of hopping for other information. So to learn to know them and how people tick. And also, I mean, you know, the social skills and soft skills are very crucial in this whole process. How to communicate your message to the research community, how to deal with researchers, how to anticipate certain problems when you're dealing with research community. I think that's also something that we've learned in the Netherlands. And it's not only technology, it's basically all these soft skills that make the process work. So learning to think like a scientist who is looking for the best opportunity to.
So I also think that it should be a part of a curriculum at the universities for library and information studies. This subject is very important for future information professionals and librarians.
Yes, and since a few years, I think, Simcha, you were Friday at a webinar about the open science communities. Maybe, no? Oh, you heard it, of course, with the Good Practice Exchange program. Yes. Well, since 2018, the University of Utrecht in the middle of the Netherlands started open science communities. And we have now 10 in the Netherlands and 2 abroad. And that's a cooperation in the university with scientists, I think more young scientists than older scientists, but with scientists, but also in cooperation with the libraries. So I think that's also very good to start an open science community. And they've also made an open science community starter kit to show how you can start such an open science community. There was a presentation in open air about it.
If I may ask something about the practical aspect. So each university has its own repository for data. Which data is a researcher uploading to the repository? All the data, only the underlying data of their publication? When does they contact a librarian? How does it practically work?
Well, in the Netherlands, I think most of the universities use data first. I don't know if you know that. Data first has been developed by Harvard University, and DANS is hosting this, but every university has its own data first, and researchers can submit their data to the repositories also during the research, and then later they can decide which data they want to deposit in a repository for the long term. Maybe Kees can add something?
Yeah, no, well, this is a very interesting question, of course, and it differs amongst disciplines, whether this is an issue or not. But I know from the life sciences, for example, of course, if you publish your data on COVID developments, next to your publication, you provide your data. But a lot of these research in the life science disciplines is about, you know, like sequencing a whole genome of patients. It creates millions of records, and it's especially also these data of which the funders say, well, I mean, this could be, you know, we invested a lot of money in your research and a lot of money in your data, but these data, maybe you use 10% for your publication, and the other 90% is still valuable. So we'd like to ask you to also share these data. And there's something interesting going on right now, for example, because the researchers say, well, we would be happy to share these data, but it's an immense amount. So where to store these data? Who's going to pay for, you know, these millions of molecular data for the next 10 years? It's not my research group, because they don't have the budget. So there we see, you know, as you mentioned, a practical problem appearing. I think in most cases, it should be good to preserve all the raw data behind a research, but that's simply not always possible, or there are no solutions yet to solve these kind of problems.
You said something, you're training the early stage researchers, and you said that sharing of data is in the beginning of research.
It is, yes.
This is the stage that you share your data with colleagues and so on. So from my experience, this is the stage that a researcher doesn't want, because he's always afraid someone is going to use his data.
But that's exactly why we frame it as this is the mind shift that we are looking for. And I think it's also a generation issue a little bit. You know, I mean, younger. I know of researchers that say, well, this was great. I gathered all these data, but I'm not in a position to do anything with the data because I'm moving to another postdoc, or I'm leaving science. So I'll just publish my data somewhere online, open to everybody who wants to use them. And you can now see some examples like the Open Science Framework, where this is a place where indeed some people say, well, these are my data. If you want to use them, please go ahead. It would be nice if you could actually, you know, make me co-author or cite me, or. But I think we slowly see the signs of people that say, well, sharing data is an essential part of the scientific process, and actually it makes research better. So please go ahead. But I agree with you. Still, in some disciplines or in some. It can be a problem. Certainly, if you're operating in a very competitive environment, you know, you're definitely not going to share your data to others before you've published all your papers. So
it may be a solution if you get a DOI to your data, and then it's connected it's signed by your name.
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, if you're not going to use them, publish them somewhere with a nice identifier. Get your credits in shape and see what's happening. But it takes time. Yeah.
Archives that you publish your results before you publish your paper, and a new model of publication, as you said.
No, it looks like we're very slowly heading for this reversing these steps in the research process. First your data, then your publications.
Yeah, and I think you're very right. People are not reading papers anymore. They're reading the abstract, the figures, and the underlying statement, and maybe the conclusions. There are so many publications, so who can read everything? And well, maybe this is the new way of publishing.
Yeah, and let us also not forget the new scientific developments around, for example, artificial intelligence. Yeah? So there are now systems in place that actually are capable of, in an independent way, browsing through lots of data and generating new kinds of information. Opening up your data to these new technologies might reveal very interesting new research, new theories even. So that's also an argument to open up your data at an early stage, I would say.
Can you see disciplines in which data is more open than the others?
It's difficult because, for example, the whole FAIR movement came from the life sciences. There they realized, I mean, it's such an immense, large community. There's so many investments being made in the data that we should, you know, we all will benefit if we start sharing our information.
Yeah.
But also on the other side, like I know of the remote sensing community where they have, you know, it's the same kind of problem. It's very expensive, those data. So we better be able to use each other's data. I'm not sure about what's going on within the social sciences or humanities. Maybe, I don't know if Ellie has any examples from those communities, but.
Well, of course, in the social sciences, if it's not about privacy data, but there is a lot of comparing. There are a lot of comparing studies, and they use the data of others, and etc. So that's, yes, that's true. but I think it's time now.
Yeah, I think we, in the end, okay, we did move into a full discussion, but definitely a good discussion. So
yes, very nice.
So thank you so much. It was very interesting, very informative, and we got a lot of information, and I think we have lots of challenges, and we will be also happy to continue our cooperation, and I hope Simcha will help us also to be in contact. And I wanted to thank you, both Kiz and Eli, and to thank you, Simcha, also Dr. Simcha Meiri, and also Sarit Sambolsem, who is head of professional processes and projects in Bar-Ilan libraries and information system. I hope it was a very successful final accord for our 4 lectures sessions. And I also hope we will continue, maybe after some brief time out. Yeah. Thank you all the participants for joining us. And maybe we will see you in the next our next meetings, and we'll be very happy to share our knowledge and experience, and to continue this process of cooperation and communication. And maybe sometimes it will be not in Zoom. Who knows?
That would be nice.
Yes.
Yes.
But it was a real pleasure having you, and it was a good opportunity to bring you here. It would be much more difficult.
Yes.
So you have to spend an hour and a half, not a day or 2. Yeah. So thank you again. I hope to see you soon.
Yes, hope to see you soon. And thank you very much for the invitation.
Yeah,
thank you very much. Thank you.
We absolutely enjoyed this.
Yeah, so we started to in our chat. I see they start to make thank you messages. Okay. I just wanted to ask you, it's not about the subject of our lecture, how it's now the middle end of March, and how the tulips are blossoming in Netherlands. Is it the time of flower festivals?
It starts now. A little bit later, but it starts now. I have tulips in my garden, and they are coloring red now. So
red.
Yes.
It's tulip time in Israel. You can go out.
Oh.
It's in Netherlands, but it's flower time here.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yes.
Yeah, we have so much pictures from these events, and I enjoy each time when I see all the colors and something incredible.
Yes.